Hello, I'm Little Gezzy Bear, and welcome to another story in my series of local history talks on Canberra, the nation's capital. Today we look at Jim Cook and the burst water main.
I hope this is in 3D.
In the 1940s and 1950s, Jim Cook had a market garden near the current National Capital exhibition in Commonwealth Park. Jim grew tomatoes and gherkins to sell in the produce markets in Civic. From his garden, Jim had a close-up view of the excavation and building of Lake Burley Griffin. When the excavation was completed, Prime Minister Pig-Iron Bob Menzies had a problem. How to fill a lake as big as Burley Griffin?
Massive problem.
Various solutions were considered, including building a pipeline from Mount Kosciuszko, or from the coastal territory at Jervis Bay. But none of the solutions was practicable.
What a dilemma.
One day Jim Cook was using a backhoe to dig a hole in his market garden, and accidentally burst a water main. The rupture in the pipe caused a 200-foot-high water spout that could be seen from all around Canberra. The Commonwealth government immediately moved to fix the burst water main, but Jim Cook had a creatively genius idea. Maybe the water from the burst main could be used to fill the still empty Lake Burley Griffin.
I'd compare him to Thomas Edison.
Jim suggested to the government that they refrain from fixing the rupture and instead let the water fill the lake. It took a couple of years, but indeed, the lake did fill up. And during this time the burst water main became a local tourist attraction. When the lake was full, the government ordered that the main be repaired, and Canberra lost one of its few attractions.
What a tragedy.
It was then that a campaign was launched to build a fountain that would resemble a burst water main, and name the fountain after Jim Cook. When he officially opened Lake Burley Griffin, Bob Menzies announced that the burst main would be recreated.
Monumental.
It took almost 10 years, but the burst water main was indeed recreated, adjacent to where Jim Cook had damaged the pipe all those years ago. Unfortunately, the records stating who the fountain should be named after were not entirely clear. The person reading the recommendation from Bob Menzies assumed that he had indicated the fountain should be named after Captain James Cook, the discoverer, cum invader, of Australia, rather than humble market gardener Jim Cook.
Typical public servant clerical error.
And so when Queen Elizabeth II pressed the large button to fire the fountain for the first time, she operated the Captain Cook Memorial Jet, rather than the Jim Cook Memorial Burst Water Main. Jim had been in Kuwait trying to convince the sheikhs that there was more benefit in burst water mains than burst oil wells, when he saw news coverage of the water jet opening, and realized the naming mistake. He took the clerical error in good spirits, knowing that at least he had done his bit for his country.
What a remarkable Australian.
Jim continued to live an increasingly obscure and bizarre life, convinced that burst water mains could solve the world's problems. It is not known what happened to Jim, but his story was recently uncovered in one secret dusty files held deep underground in the National Archives. And so, that is the story of Jim Cook, one of the forgotten treasures of Canberra, the nation's capital.
Little Gezzy Bear. That was illuminating. Do you have any more riveting stories?
Indeed I have. Rufus Bear. Next time I'll be talking about Charles Rufus, the founder of the suburb of Duffy.